So you were saying?
I was saying we're sitting up in the yurt. The sun's pretty much gone down. We can still see the forest and the nature around. It's really nice being up here with you.
Yeah.
It's very ambient, very kind of like, What I was saying is that
yeah, go on.
Well, I was saying a couple of things. One thing I was saying is like, why aren't people? I mean, this is very general, right? But why aren't more people interested in meditation, awareness, consciousness? Call it spirituality, whatever you want to call it. What was the other thing?
No, I think that was it. But what are they interested in instead? Like, is there anything like you can think of? Because if you're saying that why aren't more people interested, then one thing I'm curious about is, what are they interested in, if not that? Maybe that'll answer the question.
Well, part of the thing is like, if you're listening in to this conversation, maybe you are interested.
Right.
Maybe you have already started this path, or on the path. What else are they interested in? People in general?
Yeah, what I mean is
getting stuff for themselves. Greed. Work. Family. TV. Sports. Yeah.
Yelling at your team.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that just kind of feeds our ego, feeds our mind. What the mind wants. And distracts ourselves from this awareness that's underneath that all. It's part of ourself that's always there, always noticing, always kind of in the background. And if we're continuously distracted, continuously kind of not in tune with that, then it's very like kind of surface level living, really. And in the moment you realize that you had been living from that place, and the moment you become aware of how incredible the path of spirituality, the path of your truth actually is, when you get a glimpse of that, a window into that part of your life, it is hard to turn away from that. And sometimes we do that, we do turn away. But we keep coming back because we know how incredible that is. We know how energetic, how alive, how
we
beautiful.
Suffer like hell if we don't.
Yeah.
We suffer like shit if we ignore the calling.
Because once you know, once you become aware, awakened, once you get a window into that, and you're conscious of that part of you, you can never unlearn that.
No, you
So
can never go back.
Can never be unlearned. And this is the point, right? The point is that your awareness, or what's underneath that, the subtleness, underneath the thoughts, the mind, the feelings, will keep leading you back, keep giving you signs in your life, until one day you realize there was all a trail of signposts towards the truth, your truth, towards living that, your calling, your thing, your gift to give to the world, to yourself. when you start to trust in that, you start to see the signposts and recognize them, become aware of that. And you can use that to kind of guide you and understand who you are and understand when you're asking for certain things and they might come in different ways, but they're always there, always available. The opportunity is always there. It's just about seeing it. And most of the time we don't see it because we're blinded by our mind, by the ego. And so this path is a way of seeing what's clearly there, what's behind, you call the veil, till then. But the reality that is always there is just not available because of our mind is filtering it. And when we're able to see it, we're able to open up to it. I mean, it's, yeah, I don't want to put words around it. When you experience that, it's, there's no turning back.
And we try, for some reason we still try to turn back.
Yeah, what's with that?
It's because I was thinking about your question, why are people not interested? And you said earlier that there's a long process of spirituality where you came and went from your practice, and it was sort of on and off, and it was the same for me. And I was thinking about what was it I was chasing when I wasn't doing my practice, when I wasn't meditating, when I wasn't trying to live consciously. And I think what I was chasing is that my mind managed to convince me that the happiness that I wanted was out there in the world. That if I found the next partner, or if I found my dream job, or if I got good grades, or if I got that thing that I really wanted, then I'd be happy. So because my awareness wasn't strong enough yet, what would happen over time is the ego would plant little seeds and say, oh, what about this? What about this? And then slowly it would drag me into thinking that if I could get a certain thing or create a certain situation or get a certain person, then that would fulfill me forever. Then I would just be happy. And we kind of know it from falling in love is kind of a very basic version of it, right? Because when we fall in love, we're absolutely convinced that the other person is going to make us happy. And so far, no relationship, as far as I know, has ever gone that way. There's a lot of things in relationships, some happy, some unhappy. But no one has been fulfilled by another person, not that I know of anyway. So
momentarily, maybe our minds might.
Momentarily, for sure, yeah. but permanently, it doesn't happen. In fact, often relationships, at least for a while until we work on our stuff, can end up being much more difficult than being alone. So I think that the reason why people don't want to learn meditation, don't want to learn spirituality, is because that doesn't seem to make much sense, because they're like, it's situations, it's people, it's things that are going to make me happy, obviously. So that's what our minds tell us, and it's also what other people tell us. It's what the world tells us, what all the companies that are selling us things tell us, right? There is a vested interest in keeping us chasing after all this stupid shit. That's another thing, right? There's a vested interest in keeping us as, these dopamine slaves. So I think that we have to become disappointed with the world of objects and materialism. And I want to qualify, when I say materialism, I don't just mean material wealth, I mean people and situations as well. To be famous, that's materialism. To have the right partner, that's materialism. It's all about getting something, whether it's a situation, an object, a person. It's all about saying that if you get precisely this thing that you've decided is the thing you want, then you'll feel happy, you'll feel content, you'll be happy forever after, right? So I think that I think that one of the reasons why more people aren't going into spirituality and meditation is that it's such a strange thing to do, because they're like, well, obviously I have to get what I want to be happy. Why on earth would I meditate? It seems like a totally different path, and it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
Well, you can get some peace and quiet. Okay, but that's not what I want. I want money. I want fame. I want a career. But what's so interesting is, whenever someone wants something, what is it they actually want? Well, they want to feel fulfilled. They want to feel complete. They want to feel themselves. They want to feel like
feel alive.
They feel alive. They fulfill their potential. They become everything they can be. That's what people really want. And then, so the question is, where do they put it? Do they put it in things, people, situations? Or do they, and that's the spiritual path, do they say, well, it has to be in me because it's happening in me, so I should look inwards because that's where it's all happening, right? Even when I get what I want and I'm happy for a little while, the joy arises inside me. So I think one part of the answer is that things, our minds, our society, there's a lot of things that are pulling us towards the external world for happiness. And of course, the external world is full of beautiful things, but if you run after them thinking they'll make you happy permanently,
you'll continuously be chasing attachment or chasing
surely
outside of yourself.
You'll find disappointment over and over, right?
Yeah.
And then I think what we talked about earlier, which is something I've been ranting about, is that I think a lot of doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists are telling people that when the people are depressed, or when they have what I would call a spiritual disease, which means they don't know who they are, their job isn't fulfilling them, something isn't right in their lives, and they're getting symptoms from that. Their symptoms are telling them something isn't right. You're not doing what you're supposed to be. You're not being who you're supposed to be. Something's wrong, and they're getting symptoms, and they can manifest in all kinds of ways. They go to psychiatrists and they say, well, you have such and such diagnosis. We're going to put you on such and such medication. And oh, by the way, this is something in your brain. It's never going to go away. You were actually born with it, which they've never been able to prove. You were born with it, and you just have to live with it. But in reality, it's a spiritual disease, and you were called to make changes. You were called to wake up. When are we most likely to wake from a dream? When it becomes a painful nightmare. So the dream becomes more and more painful, and then we wake up. And then we scream, but we realize, the nightmare is gone. Now we're awake in the real world.
And so you're saying that this painful nightmare is also happening in people's emotions or people's experience, and then they go to the doctor or they go to the psychiatrist, and really it's what you're saying is it's actually just not just, but like it's a what did you say, a calling, or a kind of
what did I say? I think I called it a spiritual disease.
Yeah.
And then they get these labels, they get these diagnoses for life, and they get medication, which is always some kind of sedative, and it's always it always has some kind of byproducts, side effects that come with new painful symptoms. So I think the answer to your musing earlier is that one of the reasons why more people aren't interested in spirituality, the first is it just doesn't make much sense, because they think things will fulfill them, and everyone around them are supporting them in that decision.
Yeah.
It's kind of recent that we are kind of seeing an awakening out of that illusion on a global scale. There's a lot more spiritual people and spiritual talk nowadays. Like I'm on LinkedIn talking about spirituality. That's already kind of incredible, right? Because there wouldn't be a space for that 5 or 10 years ago.
Definitely not.
And the other part, I think, is this, that we're pathologizing spiritual diseases. Like, if you live wrongly, if you live in a way that you are less than you should be, if you're putting up with things you shouldn't be putting up with, if you're in a bad relationship, if you're not chasing your dream, if you're not living the way you're supposed to live, to unfold your potential. You're going to get sick, either physically, mentally, or both. And that illness will only be cured when you meet the call, when you follow the call to be who you're meant to be. And not everyone gets a spiritual disease, because there's a lot of people out there who are not going to be spiritual in this life. And we used to look at those people and say, well, they're doing fine, so the people who are having symptoms, they must be wrong. They must be sick. But the world, when you have had an awakening, this world is an insane place to be. It's not right now, the way society is, it's not a sane way for an awake human being to be. It's a very painful, very emotionally stunted, very violent, greedy, extremely overwhelming experience. Less so in the recent years, but it's.
Is that what you experienced too?
That's what I'm experiencing, yeah. Because I've been in Denmark all my life, so it's been much worse than it is now. Things are definitely getting better.
Yeah.
So we think people are sick, but they're not sick. They're spiritually sick. But it's not something that you cure with medicine. So I think that's one of the reasons. So I think in a more enlightened society, we will be less inclined to believe that things, situations, and people make people happy.
Outside of ourselves, so the things that within ourselves.
Yeah. And I think when people are spiritually sick, we will give them spiritual guidance and spiritual medicine, instead of what we do now, which is we give them.
What does spiritual medicine, spiritual guidance look like for you? What is spiritual medicine?
Spiritual medicine is when a person wakes up, the first thing you do is you tell them, you've been surrounded by all these people who are not awake, and they think you're crazy, and they don't understand you. And you have to understand that you're normal, and there are other people like you, and we understand you. And what you're experiencing is a completely natural reaction to an unnatural world. And we are here, we see you, and we're going to create a space for you to get better. And that's going to involve you growing into your full potential, because that's what you're actually feeling is the pain. You're feeling the pain of the seed that's still lying in the earth and hasn't started growing. You're in your little shell, and you're feeling the pain of being disconnected from what you should be. So spiritual medicine is to meet someone and see them and to embrace them and give them space, right? To come out of this
the seed
traumatized situation they've been in. The seed is there because it protects them from the insane world, right? So it's kind of like to entice them to come out of the hard shell that they've had to create, right? Because every person who is not awakened is inside a shell, and you have to be, because the world is insane, right? It grinds you down. But the spiritual person will need to understand that if you become vulnerable, there's a greater way to find protection than to hide behind a shell. That it's possible to become so great, to become so big, that the small people can't reach you anymore. That you don't have to worry about protecting yourself from them. Because from where you're standing, they're so far away that you can't even hear them anymore.
So that's what spiritual medicine is. So,
yeah, for me, in that, when you asked that, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That's what I want. That's what I wish people would have today. All the young people that are being diagnosed with all kinds of stuff. I wish there was someone to just receive them and embrace them. Right? I wish we could do that.
Maybe we can.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, you say like if the young people could have that, you know, back in the day, but like in tribes or communities and stuff, there would be people in that community that were healers or spiritual people, and other people who were having other functions and things like that. I'm sure those kids would have gone to those elders or those spiritual part of the community to ask for like just to space or have you call it spiritual medicine, but like for guidance basically, or understanding of themselves or what is going on within my body or my pain, or understanding that pain, understanding that emotion, because it can be confusing to navigate, especially when we have parents or have the people around us in our society that say that there's something wrong with you.
Oh yeah.
That you're not okay, and you need to take medicine, or you need to take. When I say medicine, I mean like the harder medicine that, you know, for example, ADHD, people have to take, and they say you have to take that for your whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, how is that going to affect you? It's like, of course, it's going to settle your emotions and pain, but also it kind of takes away an aliveness to your life and the ability to feel other feelings as well.
Yeah.
And isn't that what life is all about? Is to feel and to be alive and to experience our life fully. And I only see that as taking away from our life, not adding something. And if there was another way, which there is, why are we not taking that? Why are we not able to, and is that, you know, because our healthcare system is westernized and in a certain way, or, you know, maybe. And I think things are changing in this society. Things are, you know, going in a different direction. People are waking up. People are becoming more aware, and like you said, on a scale of like in a world scale. And we're part of that, aren't we, Caravan?
We are part of the emerging consciousness, and we're trying to help. We're trying to help birth that, and this is what this podcast is about as well. It's about finding, reaffirming, and encouraging people who are on this path. This is the part of this is spiritual medicine, right? That's part of the podcast.
Spiritual medicine.
It's to say, you know, we are here, we see you, you're normal. This, what you're going through, is normal. And
what you're going through is what every human being that feels and cares and loves goes through. Because if you put yourself in that place of vulnerability by showing up as yourself and being your expressive self, then, and being fully in that, then it can be perceived in all different ways.
Oh yeah.
And it can bring up a lot of pain when we don't get accepted. When we don't accept then our emotions, because we see them as bad. We see them as, that's a bad emotion. I can't have that in my life. We do everything we can to get away from it, only to find out years later that actually has brought up so much trauma in ourselves, because we've spent years and years avoiding that. When we could, if we could only understand ourselves and understand that emotion in a different way, and understand the trauma that's happened from our mind, trying to escape that feeling instead of going into it. Could you imagine the amount of energy and amount of pain that could be like freed up in people's lives?
Yeah. It really would
especially for young people. I mean, it's so completely confusing for people growing up that are so disconnected from that.
Yeah, and they get disconnected earlier now, and they get traumatized more now.
Why is that?
Well, Partly it's because they grow up more conscious and more sensitive. So they're actually more susceptible to trauma.
Because they're more sensitive?
Because they are more spiritual from the beginning. And partly because trauma increases with each generation. So every generation is the worst generation. Because they have the added trauma from the previous generation. And unless someone become conscious and start to clearing out the past and start clearing out the trauma they've experienced, then trauma just accumulates with every generation. And so we are at a situation right now where there's an insane amount of trauma. And especially in the West, because we're right on the back of World War II and World War I. So that means our grandparents and their parents had extra trauma due to the wars. That especially affects countries like Denmark and countries that were involved directly in those wars. Which means that there is a lot of trauma going on, and it's only accumulating because there's no one is releasing trauma because they don't have the consciousness to do so.
Some people are.
Some people are. We are, for example. And there are people who are trying to not pass on the trauma anymore, but on a global scale, the trauma is there's never been as much trauma as there is right now. And that's why we see that young people are just, the way we see it happen is that they're very unhappy, and then they get a lot of diagnoses of different kinds, but it's really just, again, it's a spiritual disease. And we see a lot of movements of different kinds that are really just pain being groups who are full of pain, who are finding different causes. Some of them are good, some of them are not, but they're all just big globs of pain getting together and taking out their pain on the world. And that doesn't change the world for the better, unfortunately.
And if you could do something about this, what would you do?
I mean, if I could do something, I would just try to tell people that, diagnoses are not the answer. It's not ADHD. It's not certain kinds of autism. It's not bipolar, or borderline, or narcissism, or whatever. It's none of those things. It's trauma, and it's coping mechanisms. It's the trauma they have, and it's the coping mechanisms that they use to compensate for the trauma. And it's all something that you can work with and you can get better. There is nothing you can't get better from. The brain is quite amazing. There was a guy who had, something had happened to his brain. I can't remember what it was, like a tumor or whatever. But they found out that he only had 10% left that was working of his brain. 10% of his brain was working. The rest was it was out of commission, basically. And the guy, he didn't have he wasn't a genius level IQ. He was a pretty chill kind of dude, but no one could tell because the brain had just compensated. So he was doing fine. And he was a builder or something, so it's not like, he wasn't doing algebra, but 10% of his brain was enough to keep him running in a way that no one noticed that 90% of his brain was gone. So it doesn't really matter what you have or what's happened to you. There's almost always a way to reach a functional level if you're ready to work with it.
That's the key part, if you're willing to work with it.
Yeah.
Ready and willing.
Yeah.
Because it's always a choice to go into that, or a choice to run away, to avoid it.
Yeah, and it can seem it can seem difficult to face it, but it's an illusion because anyone who tries to run away faces much more difficulty. It might seem there are people out there who find personal responsibility to be an insurmountable obstacle to overcome. They simply can't. They can't take the fact that they are responsible for their lives. It's too much for them. And I understand the sentiment, but the fact is, no one has ever had so much trouble as people who tried to not be responsible for their lives. It just ends up being much, much worse. It may seem it's an easy short-term decision to try to run away from your responsibility, but in the long term, it's disastrous. It might be in the short term difficult to try and take responsibility, but in the long term, it leads you to a life where you're in charge and where you get things that are good for you. So no matter how difficult it seems to try to take the reins of this thing, it's much worse to not do it. And no matter how difficult it seems, it's like, it's like anonymous alcoholics. You don't have to fix the next 10 years or 5 years or whatever. You just have to do today. You just have to do this hour. You just have to do something now. You don't have to think of the future. It's not going to happen in the future. You just have to this day, if you can do this day or this hour or this minute, if you can do that, that's enough.
And do what in that?
Try to be more conscious, try to be more accepting of yourself, try to be less hard on yourself, try to get less into all those destructive mental patterns. Alcohol is something that you feel an urge and then you drink it and then you get a temporary relief and then you get...
It's good, right, in the short term?
Yeah.
Kind of just takes away all the feeling of pain momentarily.
It does.
Dulls it down. Only for it to come back even stronger when it's gone.
Yeah. And it's the same mechanism, is that it's kind of asking you to do it. And if you do it, you relieve some of the tension that's created by not doing it. But then you've just given the cycle another day, right?
Yeah.
And it's happening tomorrow again. And it's the same with all these things. All the negative things, they have an itch, and there's a part of you that wants to itch them. And you may fail 1,000 times. It doesn't matter if you can just do it a little less than you did yesterday. Then that's fine. That's improvement. And it, like we spoke about earlier, it is an on and off thing in the beginning. That's just how it is. It's never like a puristic, perfect, like, oh, I'm gonna meditate all the time. Actually, one thing you said earlier I thought was really good when we talked about meditation is that you said, it doesn't matter how much time you do, just, do some time. Really like that. Like every day, like if you only can do 1 minute that day, then do 1 minute, but just do 1 minute, because...
Still put the time away for that day to have that 1 minute.
You put the time and you know that you did it and you kept it going. And even if you fail a day, that's whatever. That's fine too. But just, keep going. Just keep getting back up on that horse.
Keep showing up.
And keep not overdoing it, right? Because that's also how you overdo it, you burn out. Just,
and then you stop doing it for years.
Yeah, exactly. And I've done that as well. Like, that's also happened. So just like in a reasonable way, just approach it nice and consistently in some kind of way. If you can do that, you get results.
Be kind to yourself when you do stumble and you do fail and you do...
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't go to plan. Or you miss a day or miss a minute or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Either way, it's still... being kind to yourself when it doesn't work out. Just acknowledging that and then showing up. And then kind of sticking with it. But showing up for that. Saying, okay, today I'm going to just do 5 minutes or do 1 minute or whatever it is for you.
Or even just sit down and do how much you can do. You don't even have to time it.
Exactly. Do you hear the wind?
And that's it. Do you remember?
Yeah.
so many people have been standing on that stage, playing for millions of people, having billions of cash, having everyone want to be with them or be them or spend time with them. And many of them have committed suicide or spent drugs or been depressed or whatever. If things were going to make you happy, then surely these rock stars, movie stars, pop stars, they would have been happy. So far, it has never happened for any of them. The people of those kind that are happy because they live in a way that makes them happy. It's not because of the things they have.
There's a Jim Carrey who says that, like, if only everyone in the world could realize that when they have all this money, that it doesn't, like, what difference it makes to their life.
Yeah.
And they would realize that that's not going to give them much more than what they already have within themselves.
And it's okay to observe other people and learn some lessons, because you don't have to be a famous rock star to see that it's not working for the rock stars. You don't have to be a prestigious lawyer to see it's not working for the lawyers. It's not working for anyone. It's not working for anyone out there. The people who are happy because they made themselves happy.
I think the point of this is to look at yourself from within.
Yeah.
To kind of go inside yourself and ask your own self questions, your own intuition, your own awareness. To open up to that part of you. And the meditation is such a big part of that, because it helps you discriminate or distinguish between the ego, the mind, and this awareness, this intuition, and the subtleness in between that. And listen to when you're able to kind of go into that space, that part of you, to follow that. Let that guide you. That part that's really, truly important to you. Part that knows. You're doing this thing again, when you give me space.
Oh, you can feel it?
Yeah. What a gift it is, this part of ourselves. What a gift it is, and yet we don't receive it so often.
Yeah.
If only we knew that the gift, like what was within that sphere, that kind of within the present, you could say. If only we knew that there was a gift, actually. And maybe this conversation is a
gift.
Is a gift, yeah. And maybe it's a start of something in your life to reflect about what is meditation, what is intuition, what is awareness or self, or start asking yourself these questions, or just notice what comes up within you when you do meditate, when you do listen to your intuition, or start trusting yourself. And notice what happens in your life, the people you meet, notice your own energy or your own feeling of life again. Notice also the relationships and the problems and how you interact with those, the trauma or the direction of your life. Because this part of you, this part of your true self, it knows. And when we're able to connect to that, we're able to come from that place, everything else around that can, well, not can, but does actually start to fall away. And you start to see clearer. You start to come from a place of guidance, a place of truth, a place of knowing, because this is who you are, and who you get this intelligence, you get this pure creativity. And you know, at times in our life we experience this randomly, consciously. I mean, whatever it is, it comes out of spontaneity, and we feel, wow, like this is something special. And sometimes we don't even know how we get into that, and we think, okay, that's happening out of random, or happening maybe consciously because you're going into it. But either way, it's a window, it's a glimpse, it's that part of that gift. And imagine if you could actually consciously trust that part of you and consciously come from that place, to act from that place. For that to be more a part of your life than not. To the mind, to the ego, that would be completely, like you said earlier, a death. That would be destructive. But to your true self, your true path, your consciousness, your awareness, that would be freedom. That would be, you know, that would give your life a sense of I can't even put that into words right now, but it's, you know, you just have to go and experience it to see what that's like for you. And we all know what that's like in different parts of our life when it happens out of random. I mean, if you're listening into this conversation, I'm sure you can reflect on a time of life when you have had that feeling of this intuitive thing in your body is called to say, and it's just like, and you've acted from that place. Or you've had a moment in nature where you're completely present and you feel connected and feel a part of the source of life. Or maybe you're holding a baby and you're looking into the baby's eyes and you're communicating, not through words or through anything like that, but a place of something else. And this is this something else. This is this intelligence, or this kind of intuitive kind of thing that happens between one energy and another, between you and everything around you. And it's a beautiful thing when you're able to actually consciously start coming from there and start acting from that place. Togan, do you have anything to add to it?
Yeah, it's true.
Bit of a rant.
While you were speaking, I was thinking to myself that no matter how many times I hear the truth, I love it just as much every time. No matter how many times I hear the same truth spoken,
Yeah.
my love for it is just as strong.
Yeah. Love for the truth. And maybe if you're listening, this sounds way out spiritual or whatever, like, but I'm sure everyone can have that reflection or experience in their life of, you know, what that feels like. And whether you call it spiritual or not, it's it's there, you know, it's a part of every person. You know, you cannot be a human being and not be spiritual. It just doesn't exist. From my perspective, at least. We all have it within ourselves. We all have this awareness within ourselves, this intuition, this spiritual part of our lives. Maybe we our minds say like, this is our minds say whatever it says about it. It doesn't want it to be there. But you can't run away from who you are, from the knowing the truth of yourself, your person. How do you feel about that, Toda? Wow, that's stillness.
Everything is perfectly managed in the unborn. That's all I have to say to that.
Everything is perfectly managed in the
Unborn.
unborn.
Yeah.
And for somebody listening who doesn't get that, how would you explain that? It's okay if you don't want to explain that.
If somebody listening doesn't get that, I'd say nobody's listening. And nobody who listens gets that.
I notice you give like these riddles of like, sometimes.
Yeah.
You do that consciously, don't you?
Huh?
You do that consciously, like this.
Yeah, what riddles can do is, riddles can take the mind to a place where it can't find the answer by thinking.
Mm.
So sometimes I say something which doesn't make sense, because the truth cannot be understood in that way. So that where the mind ends, the answer begins. There was a Zen master, and whenever people questioned him, he just shouted. And that was enough.
You shouted.
He just shouted. He didn't shout a word or anything, he just shouted. And people got the message.
What message was that?
I guess it was all of the message. Nothing was missing. I was once sitting with someone who wanted my help. She asked me for help, and so I sat next to her and I was quiet. And we sat like that for 10 minutes or so. And then she said, after 10 minutes has gone by, she said, "I don't understand." And when she said she didn't understand, then I started trying to explain. But when she asked for the truth, I didn't try to explain at first. I only tried to explain because she didn't understand the silence.
Just most people wouldn't.
Indeed. That is why we call them the lost.
I don't know what happens actually, but when there is silence with you and I, Toa, and there is something that is very, very kind of energetic or very connecting or very kind of like alive in that space. Actually, within that space, something is very kind of powerful is happening.
Yeah.
And that's not like, and we're not saying any words, right?
Mm.
But from another area of our part of ourself is communicating.
Yeah, when we talked about spirituality is the hunt for the invisible. In that case, the invisible becomes visible, and then you feel it as energy. And that's sort of the big secret behind this whole thing, is that everything, that this whole world is filled with energy. It is energy. That the air between us is not empty at all. And that there's a wall. This wall is not disconnected from me. It's not something separate. And it's not solid at all. It's not a solid thing. It's a vibrating, alive thing. And that the consciousness that allows my mind to work is the same stuff that the wall is made of and the stone is made of. And everything else shares in this living, vibrating energy. There is nothing that is dead or separate or solid. That's the truth that is obscured by the ego. The ego makes you think that there is something you can see, hear, touch, or think about that isn't already you. It makes you think that the universe is not an extension of your body. It makes you think that there is a star out there somewhere that you don't reach to. That there is a galaxy where you haven't been.
What you're suggesting or saying is, or saying, I should say, is that the same things like you said, that your consciousness is actually connected very much to everything that's you see, touch, feel, everything is made from the same things as you or your consciousness or what? Like?
I mean, I'll say it so there's no like great misunderstanding. If you see something, it's already inside your mind, because if it wasn't, you couldn't see it. So
if I'm seeing you,
right,
or hear like seeing what you're, if I'm seeing you, then it's in my mind.
Right. Then I'm your mind. Because here's the weird thing about the human brain is that you can't see reality. It's not possible. Your senses show you yourself. When you see with your eyes, you don't see the world. You see the way your eyes look. And when you hear, you really hear how your ears work, and so on. Your senses... There was a scientist, a media scientist, who used to say the medium is the message. And what he meant was that if you have a TV as a medium, then that medium already has a big influence on what kind of content you can use to that media. So for example, in the old days, a TV was only capable of one-way communication. So the medium very strongly encouraged certain kinds of content because people couldn't reply back through the TV. So already because of how the medium works, it creates the kind of content you use it for. Same with the telephone, you know, in the old days you could only call one person at a time, so the medium created one person's conversations. And it's the same way with your senses. Your senses make the world look in a certain way. It doesn't look that way at all. You're just seeing the configuration of your senses. It's not possible to see beyond yourself. And it's an interesting thing when we talk about autism. What does autism mean? What is the original meaning of autism? Autism means a closed system, something which does not receive communication from the outside. And when we look at people who we consider to be very autistic, is that they don't seem to have much connection with the outside world. Well, the interesting thing is the soul is in an autistic environment. The soul is not connected to the world. It is completely separate from the world. And then there are certain senses that it can sort of see the world through, but your soul has never been in contact with the world, and it never will be. It doesn't exist on the same plane of existence. And that's why when you realize enlightenment, that's why why do you think you become always peaceful, always happy? Because you realize that who you are is not even in this world. You can't die, you can't be destroyed, you can't be affected in any kind of way. You're completely free because what you're made of is not something that can be destroyed. And that's why when people when people find the original mind, they say it doesn't have any specific color. It's not red, green, or blue. It isn't located any specific place in space. It's not a thing that exists or doesn't exist. It doesn't exist within those categories at all. And that's why spirituality can be so hard to explain to people, and that's why you have to be tuned in all the time before you can have an awakening. Because when you see, that's actually a form of blindness. And when you hear, that's actually a form of deafness. And tasting is tastelessness. And feeling is feelinglessness. And smelling is smellinglessness. Because all your senses are actually obstructing you from experiencing yourself. And that's why they're called the 5 thieves in Buddhism. Or is it the 6 thieves? I don't remember.
What a powerful thing to share. So then.
Yeah, I don't know what the point with all that was, but...
Well, the point is for people who are able to receive that. That is an extremely powerful thing on their path.
I think I would end up by saying to that if you haven't had an awakening experience yet, you're listening to this, then you will have one someday. And if you're listening to this, it will probably happen soon. If you have already had your experience, you already know what it's like.
Then this will make sense to you.
Right. But I would say this, when it happens, and it will happen again if it's happened before, don't freak out. Whatever happens, just enjoy it for the time that it's there. And understand that what you're seeing is proof that all this stuff you're hearing now is true. Because that's the purpose of it. It's in Japanese, it's called satori, which means a glimpse of enlightenment. So it's giving you a glimpse that all this stuff isn't just wishful thinking. It's the truth. And it's worth going to look for it on your own.
And we encourage you to do that.
Yeah.
To find your own path, your own truth. through your own practice of whatever that looks like for you, whether it's meditation or body movement or yoga or tantra or
Creativity, art.
creativity, art, yeah. Whatever channel you find yourself in.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's amazing. I was going to say wherever you find yourself.
That's right for you. And we encourage that, encourage you to be yourself, your true self, to let that express itself. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation in the Yurt. It's been pretty special, isn't it, Torbjørn?
Yeah.
Would you like to say anything before we check out for tonight?
I think you've said all the things that need to be said, Jonathan.
So have you, Torbjørn. What a gift to give to others.
It's a gift, but you have to be the one to open it.
Have a good night.
Good night.